Hello, we're going to get started now, and I'd like to introduce our speaker. This is Lisa Stevens, and she's the Assistant Dean of Digital Education at UB School of Engineering and Senior Strategist of Academic Innovation from the Office of the SUNY Provost.
Well, thank you. We got applause right off the bat, Rebecca. You'll all be seeing Rebecca, my co-presenter, in a moment. I'm just going to wing part of this. I have notes here in my presentation platform, but this is so special because Jeffrey Ryman, our incoming fact chair, said you really need to come to CIT and share the success story of FLEXspace, because everyone really should walk out of the room today feeling pretty good about this one, because you've all played a part in it, whether you know it or not, through SUNY branding. And hopefully, if you're not familiar with what FLEXspace is, you will be when you leave today, and you'll be able to share the benefits of what's available, not just to us, but to our colleagues literally all over the world. Now, we thought what we should do is start with a dignified title. But in fact, what this really is a SUNY success story. And for those of you who are wondering what the FACT Council does, we create task groups. And every now and then someone says, well, what is the impact of these task groups? Well, Mary Jo Orchak is sitting here this morning. OER, all of our OER initiatives can be traced back to her task group in part from the FACT Council. And we hope that we're making an impact on learning space adoption through this particular task group. So we've had a little bit of an impact. This is where we started. And now we're up to, yes, you are here. You are here. And one of the things that people often don't know is that SUNY has a much stronger brand outside of New York State than it does inside New York State, which I find interesting. I've talked with students at my home campus at UB who have said, oh yes, I went to a SUNY school. I thought I was going to be going to New York City, and I landed in Buffalo. You know, some of them really don't understand the depth and breadth of our system. I'll bet you've had the same happen at Stony Brook, Ken. Oh, yes. But that's, when you say you're from New York, they think everybody's from New York City, that's right.
Ask an international graduate student where they thought they were going to be.
Indeed. You get a wide variety of answers. We're being very participatory here, Rebecca. I hope you're hearing some of the banter. At any rate, we started with a few tiny test records. Emily's in the audience today. She's been a supporter from way back in the beginning of the launch of this, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So anyway, those are the numbers of where we are now. 1,400 individual EDUs in 45 different countries, and we are just getting started. I thought it'd be fun to throw in a screenshot of the original wiki of the task group. And you can see our friends Mark McBride and Joe Moreau in there, and I don't expect that you can probably read all of the writing, although it's certainly much bigger than it is on my screen. But if you look at the expected outcomes and deliverables, we actually met those fairly early on in the process. And if I were to summarize the whole thing, we came up very early with a vision. Wouldn't it be nice to respond to what Provost Lavallee suggested when he walked in the room at one of our council meetings and said, you know, folks, we're spending millions and millions of taxpayer dollars building and renovating classrooms every year. And we don't even know if we're doing a good job of sharing the innovations that are coming into each one of those spaces, and we're not exactly sure if we have all the right people at the table. Are the faculty at the table? We have standards through the SUNY Construction Fund. Do we have faculty that are engaged in the process? Let's make sure that we're making good, sound investments here and doing our best to share. So we figured what we need is some kind of repository. And it had to be highly searchable, and it should be open. That's not to say it shouldn't be password protected, but it certainly should be open and available to anyone that wants to get into it. And that turned into our mission. So we decided we were going to create a high-performance community of practice, a community tool. So people think of FLEXspace as a tool, which of course it is, but the real focus here is about the community of practice and how it's expanded. So the easiest way I could put together a graphic that described the process is it pretty much boils down to 3 different time frames. We've got the ideation stage, which took about a year, and most of the conversations are in the bullet points underneath. Now you have to remember that back in 2011, there wasn't the proliferation of the cloud-based tools that we're used to just a short time later. So we were pretty much limited to conversations around Facebook, Flickr. Google was just starting to have a little bit of an impact there in terms of website design. And there were some other cloud apps out there, but we really didn't know too much about them. And of course, the concerns are, if we're going to ask people to contribute to this collection, it better be robust, it better be secure, and and it should be secure several years from now. Good point from the audience. So all of those bullet points formed the principles that we worked from. And then Joe Moreau, who many of you in the room know, he had the temerity to go off to the California Community College system and be a vice provost of technology or vice president of technology. And Joe led this effort along with our very own Brad Snyder, who's in the room today, part of the SUNY Love Story. And feel free to jump in and say anything at any time, Brad. He's making t-shirts for us, Rebecca. So as you move forward in time, we knew we wanted to get this to production, and we knew we wanted to share it with our colleagues, because we went to a couple of conferences and the hands went up, in particular at CCUMC, and people said, we would like a piece of this. So one of my favorite quotes as we were going around trying to figure out how to deploy this was from a gentleman sitting across Joe, and those of you who know Joe know he's a pretty big guy. And this gentleman made the mistake of saying, I don't see why we have to use a commercial service. I could set up and run this thing in my office. And Joe leaned across the table and looked at him and said, yeah, we're not doing that. And he said, we're only one good power failure, one good spike, or one new boss away from losing you as a resource, and of course the computer and the tool that you would build. Of course, any one of us could have built one of these types of tools on our campus, but then we couldn't go back and rely on the security and the robustness of it. It had to be well maintained. If we were going to ask people all across the country to add to this collection and upload and showcase their best practice exemplars, then it better be there 5, 10, 15 years down the line. So Joe, being Joe, was at a conference and ran into a gal named Megan Marler. And Megan worked for Artstor at the time, and they had a new project called Shared Shelf. Now, many of you are familiar with Artstor because they were on contract with libraries all over the country, individual campus contracts or a system contract. And those contracts were somewhat expensive, and they saw the OER wave coming. They said, we have to figure out a way to leverage the back end of what we have in order to make it available for people to create and curate their own collections. Let's get this out to the community and use a little different business model. So now we're in good shape. We've got a place to put the collection. They were wonderful partners. They helped us get this launched. We helped them beat up their new product. And we got a website up on Google Sites. So now we're rolling. And the thing that's interesting is we also decided we needed a logo. Because, you know, the Innovative Instruction Space Repository, IISR, just doesn't roll off the tip of the tongue. And we started bouncing around some names and landed on FLEXspace. And the funny part is people we interacted with, we discovered later, thought we were talking about furniture on wheels. You know, here, it's a flexible room, it's a flexible chair. No, the emphasis for us was always on the exchange. It was always on the sharing of the records. But hey, if people wanted to remember us for furniture on wheels, that was good too. And we thought, you know, we better put something together, and we packed up a poster and went off to ELI. by this time, the project had expanded. We had some of our friends from CCUMC, and we went to ELI. We had a little computer set up with a very, very early test of what we had put up in shared shelf. And people walked by and said, well, that's kind of interesting. And we had formed an early partnership. We put Artstor's logo up there, and we were also working a little bit with the EDUCAUSE Learning Initiative, because they were working on a separate path to the learning space rating system. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But with this small group of people, and Peter Shea was nice enough to point us to Jerry Hanley at Merlot. And of course, Merlot is the granddaddy of all OER. And Jerry took one look at this project and looked at our prototype and said, you guys have to run with this, and I will help you. I will help you fund this. So now we know we've really got a tiger by the tail because someone's willing to give us money. So there you go. And somewhere along the line, as we were meeting, we figured we better codify this. These are 2 snapshots in time. The first was when we first got together. None of us had gotten together around the table at the ELI event, and you may recognize the people from left to right. It was Joe, myself, Sandy Peterson, I think is her last name, but I may be wrong on that, at CCUMC. She's in New Jersey, Jerry Hanley, and Claire Vandenblink, who used to be at Cornell. Then we got together in Vegas. And in Vegas, we said, all right, now we're going to do real project planning. We're going to come up with a business plan. Artstor was at the table. Megan was there in addition to the 3 folks in the above picture. And then we had Carrie in the mix. And Carrie said, we're going to find a way to make this fly and sustain it. So here's just a few screenshots from the old tool. This is how Artstor functioned. If you're a librarian, you'll have a real appreciation for this because we worked with a lot of librarians, and I love how librarians think. And they get to detailed levels of taxonomies that make it highly searchable. And that's what we wanted. But part of the challenge was, how do you make it highly searchable but not require so much data entry that it's going to turn people off? And this was all driven pretty much by Brad and his team on the AV side, because the AV technologists and the IT folks, along with the furniture, were the ones that were building most of the technology classrooms. So they had it down to specific brands of equipment in the rack, all the equipment that you would see normally in racks like this in front of me. So you had a grand record, and here we had our first 24 records uploaded. We thought we were pretty hot stuff. And although I don't think anyone's cat was in that early collection, I think that came later. And then we looked at the back-end database and how that functioned. Very, very robust. And then we said, okay, we think we're in good enough shape. We had the shell of a business plan. So you can see where we went pretty much from 2013 to 2014. The New Media Consortium decided they wanted to invite some venture capitalists in to run their own version of the NMC Shark Tank. And we beat out, I believe it was 50 proposals to be invited. We didn't win, but we got gobs of really good advice from people that were there about marketing and packaging and thinking like a business person to make sure we could sustain the innovation. I told you I would pay homage to you, Brad. So that was taken 2 days ago. You look very stern.
So much younger then.
It was 2 days ago. So one of the things we're talking about in terms of communities of practice is it's nice to have all the AV people together. And we all enjoy each other's company. But in order to sustain this tool, we started talking about what's it really like for a campus. Now, amongst us friends, we know that when you have an opportunity to build a new space, generally speaking, what happens is your facilities people work with an architect. They come in, and the AV people might get invited to the table, and usually plans are presented, and then the faculty are brought in at some point in time. And what you've got is all 3 of these major groups kind of sniping at each other, and by that time the project is so far down the road that it's very, very difficult and certainly expensive to make any changes. I've seen faculty walk into rooms where the sight lines are not clear. I've seen people go into rooms where the projector sight lines aren't correct. And it's really no one's fault per se, because each group within that big active learning circle or grouping there are looking at things through the lens of their own experience. So we wanted to make sure we were paying attention to the pedagogy. When a faculty member says, oh, you say it's an active learning classroom? What makes it so? Show me the data that says that my students are going to learn more effectively in this space versus that space. And we wanted to make sure that community had a place in FLEXspace. When the AVIT people come in and they say to an architect, we want to make sure that the trenches are big enough in order to run the cabling that we need, they have to show exemplars of other classrooms that have done the same. And of course, the architects and the facilities guys, they just need to be there because they're paying attention to the things we don't know about. Fit, finish, all of those types of things. So we went back to the drawing table and hooked up with 25 of our closest friends around the country and said, please help us rethink these taxonomies. And as you look through that grouping of people, there's people from literally all over the country. We were already getting a foothold into a lot of a national audience. And then we went back to Boston with our newly revised taxonomies and talked at the AIA, at the American Institute of Architects, I believe is that acronym. And I said, what do you think? Is this going to work for you guys? And they said, yeah, these 3 taxonomies, that's going to help because it's all tied to a single record. So we went back and did some more planning. And then we said, we really need to finish a business plan. And usually my one-liner with a sponsor partner is, what do we know? We're a bunch of dumb academics. Business plan? We came up with a 5-year business plan. And the feedback we got is, this is good. You might be asking for a little too much funding, but we said, it's okay, we can adjust. So then we got our first sponsor. And we will be forever grateful to the representatives at Herman Miller who believed in us from the start, who were at the poster session. And we said, the chair people, yep. Herman Miller, the chair people. Yeah, they have chairs on wheels. No, they actually have a very robust learning environments research group, and as does some of their competitors. And we were told at that poster session, you know, we're not going to give you any money now, but come back to us in a year. And when we came back to them in a year, we had things wrapped up. We had a good business plan in place. So now we're going out. We've got the robust platform. And these are the talking points that we were really using. Because you want to make sure that in a classroom, you've got the opportunity to capture content effectively, that the sound is good, that the video is good, that it's not a camera, a static camera at the back of the room, that it's actually a camera that can either be tracking, so you have a tight shot, so you can use that instructor for developmental education modules. You can use that content in online instruction. You can use the content to stream the entire class if you want to replicate that environment to people that are at the other end of the stream. And we wanted to come up with design standards to really support active learning. But most of all, we wanted everybody to understand everybody else's language. You know, let's not snipe anymore. And then we put that to the test. And we got some really nice press early on because people realized we were onto something here. And then we started talking about integrating the learning space rating system. So at the same time we were developing the repository with pictures, several of our colleagues were developing a quantitative system based on the LEED environmental credit system that allowed you to quantify the learning potential of a space based on some basic design functions. And they also placed a good value of points on whether or not a campus had a master learning space plan. You know, what is your campus plan for refreshing learning spaces or learning environments. And what this did is it enabled people like Lori Fox at Geneseo to go through the entire campus and rank all the rooms. Now, obviously, you want to use the same people because then you're going to run into, you don't want to run into inter-rater reliability issues. It's subjective. Does this room have this? Does it have that? A little bit subjective, not much. And you self-award a credit. Now you've got scores for all your classrooms. You can come back and prioritize. These are the rooms that really need attention quickly. These ones are in pretty good shape. Oh, but these guys here, they have big enrollment, stress. We need to take care of them. Okay, so we can leapfrog them, But you can have data-driven decisions around all of that. And this was anyone that's familiar with working in particular with the architecture or facilities community is going to recognize this life cycle of learning space planning and design. And FLEXspace and the learning space rating system said, if you combine the use of these two tools, quantitative and more subjective and qualitative, these are the rooms we like, these are the features that we think we need to have, you've got a pretty good ecosystem. And then we got a little extra help, because when Chancellor Zimpher went to give her keynote speech at EDUCAUSE, she actually closed with FLEXspace, and you could have pushed all of us over there from SUNY with a feather. We didn't know that she had this in her plans, and that really provided a nice level of gravitas to it. So now, when Lori and her team at Geneseo presented at the SCUP conference in Vancouver, now we're up to 2016, these were our stats. So we had gone from this little pile of test records that you saw with the 24 spaces, now we're up to 1,800 users. We're in over 700 academic institutions. Now we're starting to get some attention. Now we have the thrill of walking into conferences and hearing other people talk about, hey, have you seen this FLEXspace thing? And we were very proud to be able to say that it was born in SUNY. And then, by golly, we were awarded the Campus Technology Innovators Award. Now, the reason that was really, really special to me is because, other than the obvious, is on one hand we had Gardner Campbell from Virginia talking about one of the projects he had worked on, a very well-respected academic, and on the other side we had Barry Fishman from University of Michigan talking about his new GameCraft project. So we were in solid company with receiving this particular award. Now, now we're getting close to where we are today. And I apologize for taking that long, winding path, but I figured with this particular audience, you might want to see the real growth details. And you can't imagine the slides I had to leave out. Just tons and tons of fun stuff. At any rate, this is now the core team. This is essentially our board of directors. And if you're familiar with learning spaces, I see Emily shaking her head. This is the who's who of people that are working in learning spaces. And about a month ago, Mark Lee, who's actually based out of Australia and California, has a visiting professorship at Carnegie Mellon, and he reached out to us and said, we'd really like to hook into FLEXspace to do some deep research. We want to be able to track the analytics. We want to be able to see the usage trends. We want to see the click streams to understand what people are looking at. And all along there was just one problem with the whole affair. And we were very glad to include Mark in our plans, is that the Artstor interface, Artstor was bought by Ithaca Research. And they said, you know what? We're going to decommission those servers. We're going to move those servers to California, and we're going to discontinue that service. So you guys need to find another place to live. And on one hand, we were okay with that because we really wanted it to be mobile. We wanted people to walk into rooms with their mobile device, with an iPad or an Android phone, whatever, and upload the content right from their phone. And we weren't able to do that on that particular interface. On the other hand, it's like, and when do we need to be off the server? December. Oh, okay. And it's not that they didn't give us enough forewarning, but we literally, and Brian has been nothing but wonderful from the CPD to manage all of the finances behind this, because we saved our pennies, nickels, dimes. CCUMC invested in us. Herman Miller invested in us. Cal State University System invested in us. My time, I was given the freedom to work on all that. And Carrie and Kim gave me broad opportunity to keep this going and the focus going. And then SUNY kicked in a few bucks as well to help design this new interface. So we knew we needed a new interface, and part of that was, well, where are we going? So we looked at past performance and started looking at the number of hits we were getting at all these different conferences, and there we were. There was the projected growth. So I started the slide with the current stats of where we are today, and we're fairly certain that this is where we're going to be very shortly in 2020. And also went through, and we didn't make up these titles. We went through the old interface, and I did this, Rebecca, who meantime, when we were talking with the Cal State system, I said, I really need some help with this. And Jerry Hanley generously said that if you work with one of my people here in the system, who I've worked with in the past, I will help fund that position. And Rebecca has since picked up an awful lot of the work that goes behind this. This has essentially turned into a full-time job for her. And she went into the system, pulled the analytics out, and these are the people that are in the system, which of course when you're out trying to present to sponsors and asking people to consider supporting this so we can keep it free for all of you, these are the people that are in there. And we have expanded our base. So if you look at the people on the right-hand side of the screen, these are professional organizations that might normally be in competition with one another. But here they all agree, and they've coalesced around the idea of collaborating with FLEXspace because all universities benefit. We all benefit by sharing this information. And over to the left, you can see the sponsor community that's put varying levels of money on the table. So I pulled this from the Provosts Talk the other day, and I think we have a pretty bright future because the reason why we've morphed into a community of practice is to do exactly what's being described there. Yes, it's a tool, but more importantly, it's a community of practice where we're bringing in people from all over, but the limitation really was, at the end of the day, the platform. So once the platform was down, Rebecca and I had to start talking with people to see, is there an off-the-shelf tool that we can use? Should we go back to using Google? How can we make the tool more functional? And these are the new features that are going to be rolled out, and you're going to get a preview of the tool as it stands right now today. So by UB Tech, in 2 weeks in Vegas, we're going to have a good amount of these features built in. We'll have profile pages. We migrated, by the way, all of the collection that was in there into the new platform with a new shell. There was very little downtime between the two. But you couldn't upload new content, you couldn't edit that content, you couldn't go in and tweak any of the content until the new portal is complete. And we're just now getting to that place about 4 months later. But you can look through this list and see that we're going to continue to have the exemplars of learning spaces, but we're also going to include a toolkit. And the toolkit is going to drive that one-stop shop feeling behind it. Planning tools, research tools, instruments to use for surveys. Idea boards, think Pinterest, very similar to Pinterest. You have an idea, you want to pull something from Iowa State, boom, bring it into your idea board and then invite a vendor to come in and take a look at it and help you design something around that. By the way, one of the principles, the guiding principles we knew from the start that I neglected to put into the bullet points was we knew that if anybody used this system to cold call any one of you, we were dead in the water. And all of the vendors that come in and partner with us, it's all about the partnering. You know, they know they can't pull the data. You won't get, and if you do get cold calls out of this, we want to know about it. You invite people to come in and collaborate with you. Rebecca is so much better positioned to actually talk about these features that I'm just going to be quiet. And I'm going to come over here, and this is our lead slide when we go out and speak to our community. Please, if you know of people that might be interested, because there's broad benefit to being in this portal as a sponsor partner. So, Rebecca, you out there? Are you unmuted? I'm going to stop this show. Oops, I don't know as I should have done that. There we go. Stop share. It's all yours, my friend.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hi. Great. I can hear everybody. Wonderful. And I can't see you, but I heard the name. So good morning, Brad and Brian. Thank you so much for your help along the way and on a continuing basis. So I am thrilled to be here, and actually I've heard bits and pieces of the love story, but I don't think I've ever heard it in this particular detail from Lisa, so I'm really glad to be here today. And as you all can see and hear, and I get to experience on a daily basis, Lisa has a lot of passion for this project, and I really appreciate that, and I have a lot of passion for it as well. I just wholeheartedly believe in the value of this, and that's why I have no problem going and being evangelical about FLEXspace and doing user outreach, user support, reaching out to vendor sponsors and partners and so forth. I have no problem asking for them to support this resource because I see so much tremendous value in it. So I will give you a little tour here, and let me know how much time I have if you need to jump in. And also Lisa will field any questions from you all. I don't think I'll hear you in the microphone, and you can walk up to the laptop there. So what we're looking at is the fully fleshed out prototype. So these are right now PDF files that show you all of the different features and functionality that we are in process of building. And then I'll show you the actual live portal. I'm hoping that many of you have FLEXspace accounts. If you don't, please go request an account after your sessions today, and you can get into the live portal. So what you see here is our design concept that everything needed to be very visually oriented. So when a user logs in, this is what you would see. And first of all, we're presenting curated galleries. So what you have in FLEXspace are all examples that are contributed by campuses themselves. So the FLEXspace team doesn't contribute any content. What we will do is curate content and seek out valuable resources and so forth, and nudge people to contribute their resources. So we will have sort of an editorial board that will be comprised of some of the folks from our core team, our vendor partners, and so we can create these curated galleries. Maybe these are highlighted spaces to really give kudos to those universities who are contributing. Maybe we highlight a collection of SUNY spaces on the splash screen here. Maybe we curate and highlight trending interests in the field. So for instance, if people are interested in maker spaces or labs or virtual simulation spaces, we can curate that and highlight that here on the splash page. And then we know that people want to come in here and either browse and take a virtual field trip and get inspiration. Maybe they're in the early stages of thinking about some spaces on their campuses, or maybe they want to dive in deep and see exactly examples of spaces who have movable chairs, interactive whiteboards, huddle spaces, and so forth. So you can search the entire collection, you can filter, and then you can just browse and then go into specific details. So one of the nice things in the old tool, if you're familiar with it, you maybe took maybe 10 photos of your space and it would create 10 separate records. Now the idea is everything is contained in this one case study format. So this is a template-based tool, so it's really easy for users to upload their content, and it creates this beautiful case study format that you can share on your own website at your campus, that you could share the link right here, grab a link and share it outside of FLEXspace as well.
And yes, we know that it says San Diego and Buff State up there. Remember, this is all mock-up. The better one is the picture of Stanford with one of our campuses, but.
Yes, so this is what we're thrilled to have our web development team who works around the clock, and we have lots of design meetings, but sometimes those, the fictitious nature of some of the photos with the labels kind of gets put in there. So yeah, she'll get a kick out of that. So here's an example of what it would look like. It would have the example has the contributor, the main contact person at the university, some required data. So what we also did, we did extensive user experience research to come up with this design, very iterative process, and we determined that those robust taxonomies that we have describing the spaces, there are a handful of pieces that we wanted to require. So that there is a little bit of consistency while allowing the freedom for users to detail the space as they like. But those required pieces of data provide the way for us to filter and easily find spaces that we're interested in. So some of the data like seating capacity, square footage, the type of classroom, those are required. Some of the optional items are, putting in the costs, like rough ballpark figures of cost. We've integrated the learning spaces rating system scoring here, and we're working with that team to even further integrate the LSRS score sheet right into the FLEXspace tool, so you could click and even open up the score sheet and put your scores in right there. We're building in some features to benefit our sponsors and supporters. So we're allowing some of the premium sponsors to be able to highlight their brand here without being too in your face in terms of advertising types of look. And then you can see there's details about the space and then lots and lots of photos. And I'll show you a real live space here in a moment. Here's an example of one of the photos, and we're planning to build in this tool as well. If you wanted to have these hover tags on there and show those, you can detail specific pieces of equipment in the room so that when someone's browsing this, you could learn more about it. Now also we have in our plans, and we're considering what are the ramifications of this if universities want to use FLEXspace not only as a place to put exemplary spaces, but also to use it as a place for their own classroom directory. And so this tool could be useful if, let's say, a faculty person is looking at, I'm going to be teaching in this learning studio in the fall, I'd like to know more about what's in the room, and I can find out some more details about the equipment with these hover tags, and also some details that I'll show you. So for instance, this one opens up, tells me, aha, it's a Herman Miller chair, if I want to learn more about it, and I can get more information from the Herman Miller folks. And then the taxonomy that we had in the old system, we brought that over, refined it a little bit, added some things, combined some things, and so forth. So we have this tagging system where when you're uploading a space, you can easily just click on the tags and it details the space in all of the different same taxonomies. Learning, layout and furnishings and furniture, the environment like the flooring, ceilings, lighting, and so forth, all the technology equipment in the room, and then the learning elements in terms of what kinds of learning activities are going on in the space, potentially research activities, and so forth. And then any sort of, again, the technology and furnishings, all the lists of brands that might be in the room. Another nice feature is that in addition to just putting the collection of all the photos, you can create these feature sections. So you might want to highlight a particular piece of equipment in the space, or let's say it is an active learning classroom, maybe you have a photo of the collaborative huddle space that you have, and maybe a little bit of a story here of how you're using the space. Maybe not only detailing the equipment, but also how it's being used, the impact, and so forth. And then we're encouraging folks to tell us the story about the space, you know, how the space came to be, maybe some sort of evidence of impact. And then, similar to the old tool, you have an option here where you can upload additional resources in addition to photos. So this might be a floor plan document, or a wiring diagram and schematics. This might be some sort of, if you're doing research in the space, this might be an observation protocol that you've uploaded. Or, again, if this was going to be a resource for faculty who are teaching in the space, this might be where you put your user support materials, job aids, how-to guides for, you know, using the interactive whiteboard, or techniques and tips and strategies for conducting active learning activities and so forth in this particular space. So you could upload all of those resources, and they're documented, they're stored here in this space in one convenient container, if you will. And then you can upload additional spaces. So something that we added in this new tool iteration is going back to something that Brad had brought up, and we all were kind of concerned about, and Joe Moreau talked about it, and that is the level of effort it might take to detail a space on your campus. And maybe and likely there's not just one person who has all the information about detailing the space. So one wonderful feature that I love is we'll go into edit the space. So this is, if I am a contributor and owner of this space, I can edit the space. So when I open that up, you'll see the template here. Now, this feature I'm talking about is Collaborators. So when let's say I'm at San Diego State, I'm in, on campus, I snap some photos of my new active learning classroom, and I upload and I start a record here in FLEXspace. Well, now it's not just going to be me who is detailing the space. I now can add collaborators, other people from my team at San Diego State, so that they can now be editors of this. So this is just like a Google Doc, if you will, shared document. Now this space record becomes a shared document. And so this lists everybody who has a FLEXspace account, and then I can search for somebody in the system, add them as a collaborator, and now that person can come in and start adding more details to the space. So the way I think about this is, let's say, again, we might add somebody from the facilities, and they could add some details. We might add somebody from the academic technology group, and they can add details. We might have some faculty who are teaching in the space, and they can add the stories about how they're using the space, or they can add some of their instructional resources if they want to. And then if you have vendor partners who are part of the FLEXspace community, you can add those vendor partners as well, and then they can come in and add more photos, embellish the details, really take some of the workload, kind of spread the workload, if you will. And this concept that I've always been thinking about is that maybe even when you're going out to bid with a vendor supplier, or you're thinking about a project, why not build in documentation of the space as part of the project? So that could even be one of the requirements, is that, okay, in addition to building this space, we will also document it, maybe even before and after photos, but really take some quality photos and know that all the details will be in here. And guess what? We want you to document the space in FLEXspace. So that we have this as almost a requirement of any new space moving forward on campus. When you're looking at a space, you can like it, add it to your like spaces, and so forth. Another thing about the tool is that, let's say I'm going to click on this My Spaces. So these are the spaces that I've uploaded or that I am a collaborator on. And you'll see the lock icon and the FLEXspace logo. So when you're uploading a space, maybe it's not quite ready for prime time and you don't want to publish it to the community yet. So you can keep it private or you can publish it to the community. But you can see all the spaces that you're working on here. And again, I can add collaborators to a private space and we can work on it until we're ready for it to be published to the community. And then another way that we feel like members want to interact with the collection is that oftentimes you want to see what's going on at another university, maybe it's a peer institution, or you know thought leaders in the field and you want to see what they're doing. So you can browse by institution. And again, we'll have the gallery feature, we'll have all institutions, and this is where you get the funny mix of the institution and the photos here. So you can scroll and browse on all institutions that are members of FLEXspace, and then look at a particular institution's page. So this would list everybody on that campus that has a FLEXspace account, a little bit about the campus, and then any spaces or toolkit resources that have been uploaded by that campus and published to the collection here. So this is really nice. You can see, you could use this for your own university as well. You might have an aha moment that you didn't know that Renee was even working on spaces on your campus. And so this is, again, that way to collaborate with colleagues, and you can see other spaces. Oh, I didn't realize that Lab 1200 had that particular configuration, whatever it may be. So you can imagine you could appoint your, again, faculty, your campus stakeholders here. Even we had, I think it was Melaine who talked about, she had the idea that, oh yeah, what if we even used FLEXspace as a support tool for our tech support folks? So before they go, they haul themselves all the way across campus to change a light bulb or fix some sort of problem with the projector or the screens. They could go into FLEXspace and easily see all the details of the equipment, the layout, what's in that room, and use FLEXspace to see that and prepare themselves before they go across campus to fix a piece of equipment. So you can see everything that's on your campus right here. And then so the things that are being rolled out in the immediate future, like Lisa was saying, in a couple weeks for UB Tech, is that upload. So that's one of the core elements of this tool, really, is for folks to be able to upload their spaces and let the collection grow. And then anybody who has spaces who have been ported over from the old system, you'll be able to go in and edit those spaces and add to them and so forth. And the other big piece of this is the community. So this will be everybody who has a FLEXspace account right now. It's over 3,000 people will be listed in this membership directory. So you can find other people who are working on, interested in learning spaces as well in the member directory, and then of course a community forum. So anybody can start a conversation. We could even use it as a research tool within FLEXspace and our research working group to maybe put some surveys out there, poll the community and so forth. So a typical discussion forum, but really, again, adding to this what Lisa talked about, the one-stop shop element, the collaboration, the community and so forth. We think that's a really big element of this. I feel like I see pockets going on with the learning spaces constituent group. They have a listserv, there's a Slack channel. We've heard from faculty who are teaching in active learning classrooms that they don't have a place. They have learning communities on their own campus, but they don't have a learning community, professional community across campuses. So we're really excited to roll this out to faculty as well.
I think one of the other points of interest was refresh rates. That if in the back-end taxonomy you're keeping track of when you installed equipment, you can start to use that as a budget driver for when to start to plan your refresh and your budgeting on campus. Yeah. Keep going, Rebecca. You have about another 5 minutes?
Okay.
And then we can go to Q&A.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so the prototype, I'll go really quickly here. Partners would have their own page, which is kind of like the institution pages to feature, their collections. Maybe they have partnerships. I know the Big Ten Alliance is working with Herman Miller, and perhaps we would have a gallery here of, spaces from the Big Ten Alliance and so forth. And then idea boards is what Lisa was talking about as well. We also heard that not only would you keep private idea boards, maybe again you're collaborating with a team, you are building a new space, and you want to just have a private collaborative pin board, if you will, to put all of your ideas. But you can also publish those idea boards to the community, and that way you might follow thought leaders. Like it was Adam Finkelstein was one of the people who said, "Yeah, I want to publish my idea board. I want to see what other thought leaders are thinking about and getting inspired by, and so forth." So you can kind of browse people's idea boards here. So I'm going to move over to the tab. This is actually the live site. So the difference you see is you see the different menu items: spaces, institutions, partners, all of the menu items up here. Well, now the current site, until we roll out the next piece in a couple weeks, is just browsing all of the spaces that we pulled over from the original system. And then we've been adding a few more spaces through the administrative back end to just kind of play with the tool and see what that looks like. So this is live, and these are the filters I was talking about. So you can filter on the room type here. Another important filter is seating capacity, project scope. Is this a refresh, new construction, even a conceptual space that isn't really in existence, but we're thinking about designing that. What kind of institution? We're expanding to serve the K-12 community now as well, but what type of institution, space, and then sorting by date, alphabetical, and so forth. So I wanted to show you some of the examples here. I'll pull up this the Learning Glass studio at San Diego State, and this is an example of a real space that you can go take a look at. And when you look through all the photos, you can scroll through in the photos there, and then you'll see some of the details have been uploaded, but this was one of those that was ported over from the old system, so we'll go in there and have them edit and add even more tags. But they have lots of the technical specs there, case study and impact, and then I wanted to show you what they had uploaded is an observation protocol, so a research protocol, and then the parts list. If you want to build your own learning glass, here download the parts list to do that. And then you can see additional photos include some floor plans of the space, some renderings, 3D renderings, and so forth. So these are the kinds of things that you can add and upload to your own space when you guys get in here and start playing around with the system. And one of the things I didn't point out too is you'll notice, and then I'll turn it back over to Lisa and the group for Q&A. You'll notice here that we've got the little heart icon. You'll be able to like a space, and then you can see even what are the most viewed spaces, what are the popular spaces, if you will, that folks are liking. That might be another way that you're getting inspiration and browsing the collection.
So you have to.
So I will turn it back over to Lisa. I can leave this up if you have any questions here, or we can go back to Lisa's slides, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I think the way this is going to have to work is I either need to lean over to someone or parrot the question. And since I'm very good friends with Emily, I'm just going to lean right in.
Hi, Rebecca. I have a question right away about the heart. Now, did you say you have to click on that if you like the space, or is it just going to automatically happen when you view that space?
So the heart would be liking the space. So
Okay.
where the design will either, I'm not sure if it will support this functionality, like if I want to like the space from the thumbnail view, I'm not sure if that works yet. But the way it would work is that while I'm looking at a space and I like it, I can click the heart, and that's
Okay.
number one. It's bookmarking it for myself. So when I go into liked spaces, these are my liked spaces, and I can quickly go back and find the ones that I have liked.
Okay, and then the other question is, if we're not using the partners that you have, we do have Herman Miller equipment, furniture in our classrooms right now, but say I buy from Steelcase, and I got the nodes, and I'd like to show that off. Is that okay to list that? But they're not partners, correct?
Oh, that's fine.
It's okay?
There's a lot of steel case stuff in there.
Yeah, I know, I
That's
saw
fine.
a
No,
lot,
it's-
but I
Is there a way
didn't
to
know.
formally call it out?
Yeah,
Call that
can you
out?
call it out?
Yeah, you can do that in the tagging, right, Rebecca?
Yes, so you can, yes, this will be a good, motivational element to tell Steelcase, hey, become
Yes,
a partner,
yeah.
and that way you can be a collaborator
That's what I
on
thought.
this space, you
Yeah.
can, participate in the community forum and so forth. But you can absolutely detail all of those spaces in here. So it's not just the partners that you can tag. We did determine that, so there are ways that our, partner sponsors can have their tags and brand in here, but also we felt like it was important for the users to be able to tag any and all brands that are in your room. So under this brand tab, we will have an extensive list of specific brand names, like you said, so that you can detail everything that's in your space so that it's useful for you. We'll put this messaging out there as well, but if there's anything that is not on the list and you want added, you can always reach out to us and we'll make sure to get that on the list in terms of terminology for the equipment, brands, and so forth.
And this is about the space. This is about accurately representing what's on our campuses and sharing with others. Don't pay any attention to what brands you're buying. Just go ahead and list brands in there. That's helpful to others to know what kind of gadgets. We have an entire other deck that we provide to our sponsors. Do you want to pull up the pitch deck and show the audience here just a couple of slides with what we're suggesting are the additional benefits for a,
Sure.
Okay, so.
Yeah. And while I do that, Kit, go ahead, and I can hear your questions if I just be quiet.
Okay, so we have another question here.
About the brands that are not in your system. The fact, it seems that if you're, like for example, there may be somebody local. They're not big, they're not international. There's, let's say, somebody in Binghamton that we use because they're a good partner for us. You're saying we have to tell you about these people, then you'll add them in. I mean, is there a way to include like a form in this area on that brand's page or whenever you're doing it, so that we could just put in the information because we have it?
I can actually answer that if you're.
And I didn't make that clear, so thank you for that question. So in addition to the convenient way of just clicking on brands, you have full access to there's lots of open text fields in this template. So you're adding the room name, the building name, overview, and I'll scroll down here. There are lots of open text here for additional specs for adding these feature elements. So you can add as many feature elements as you want. So if you're working with a local vendor who builds a certain piece of equipment and you love it, you could put their photo here. You could have their brand name right here in the title and say, we love the Tech 101 instructor station, and then you can write a description about it. And all of these, all of the text that you enter is fully searchable.
Right.
So it doesn't just have to be the brand tag. You will be able to find it just through a search.
But my point to you then is, you might want to ask that we include some contact information. That way you would be able to contact them.
Oh, we're going to make it easy for them to contact us, because the beauty of this is you can.
A local person, they may not know.
No, but you can.
What I'm saying is, let's say I have a local vendor. I'm putting it in there. I'll put the contact information in. You now have a new contact that you did not know about, because you're not going to know that ABC, Tech Furniture or whatever is in this in this area. So it seems to me that you might want to provide some mechanism, because that will give you another contact that you did not know about.
Fair point. Thank
I
you.
like that.
Yep.
I like that. You know, and there's one mechanism, but maybe it's a little more hidden. I like what you're saying with that, and I'll think about that. One mechanism would be if you thought, oh, I want to add somebody as a collaborator, and you search on their name, and they're not, and lo and behold, they're not in the FLEXspace membership. You can easily click the invite button and send them an email and say, hey, join FLEXspace. Now, I'll make sure perhaps that mechanism could also send the email to us, so that if anybody gets invited, we know, we have a little bit of a record of that as well. But I like your idea of somehow being able to see those new partners, potential partners for us.
I'm curious, since I'm going to pick on Brad, because you've been in from the beginning and you haven't had the opportunity to see some of the new
Right.
portal features. So I'm curious if, how this contrasts, or what your impressions are of the new.
I'm really impressed. It's much more palatable than the previous version. I love the idea of being able to use this as a departmental resource or a campus resource to track, existing spaces, maybe even, as a resource for technicians or faculty before they go in the space, as a repository to have directions on how to use the room. So, I mean, there's a lot of, my brain's spinning right now, so I'll have to sleep on it for a while. But yeah, it's very, very good.
That's gratifying. Thank you. Oh, hang on a second. I'm running. I'm here.
Have you thought about providing awards on spaces that kind of exceed or really like out of the box and create programming that's really out there, kind of like a Tony Awards for flex spaces?
The Flexies.
The Flexies, there we go. You know?
Actually, we have talked about that. I think we need to have resources right now targeted to greater critical mass.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, we very much would like to have that. So we don't know where, SUNY has been very generous in enabling us to continue to support this out of SUNY. It could conceivably spin off to a nonprofit. It could remain with SUNY. We don't, we're waiting to see how that's all going to pan out. Hello.
Good morning, Rebecca. This is Kim.
Hi, Kim.
So I want to come back to what the initial impetus was for this, which was about, informing the building of new classrooms and renovating of existing classrooms based on some standards and best practices, right, in this field and community. And I know that a lot of our focus has been on the platform and the exchange part of it, but I feel like now, and I guess this is a question or an assumption that I'm making, we've got a lot in there, right? We have the rating system, right? Are we, where are we in thinking about, being kind of like the leading entity for here are the standards, here's what it is, to be doing the best learning spaces, and maybe it is the awards, and this is the showcase place for them. I feel like that is something that we could be promoting and advocating and sharing more.
Good point. I like that. I think the Industry Advisory Council is likely to play a large role in that. We modeled a lot of the system and the governance. I didn't get into the details of the governance, but we intend to model CCUMC, which has very strict rules on the vendors about what they can and cannot post on the listserv, what they can and cannot pitch, but they're very much a part of the active community. And it's a wonderful place to interact with vendors and share ideas. And I think that, you know, between the two, we can.
So, because where I'm going with this is I think one of the great outcomes of this could be influencing the next generation of furniture and other things that vendors are providing, right? I mean, that's really what we've brought together as a body of knowledge that has the intersections of AV, facilities, learning design, right? So, I mean, that really does not exist in this way anywhere else. I just feel like there's more we can do with that.
And anyone, I mean, you all know how to reach me. And certainly on the website, there are resources where this has just been one of the most gratifying professional experiences anyone could be a part of, because it's truly an opportunity to connect with people, not just around the country, but literally around the world. I'm curious, you've been very attentive here today, and what drew you to this session today?
Very joke. Campus. I said, the title says that learning spaces. So just I wanted to see how the distance learning or the online learning, how does the spaces affect for online learning people? So I said, just want to see what's going on here and say how.
That was one of the drivers. It really was, is can we create spaces to capture content and have multiple use more effectively? I think you have been just a stunningly patient and wonderful audience. Thank you so much for your attention. This was the last session of the conference, and we really appreciate you all being here today. Thank you so much. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for putting up the where we're going to be screen.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Thank you all.
You're true. Sorry? Where are you going to be? Oh, can you put that slide back up again, Rebecca? The where we're going to be?
Yep.
And thanks for getting up early for us.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure.